Dennis, welcome back to Life's Checkmark podcast. I had you back on episode 12, the Journey to Sobriety. And it was one of my biggest listening episodes. So if you haven't checked that out, check episode 12. You can listen to Dennis there. And you get some background about Dennis and where he came from and his journey through life. But I asked Dennis to come on again to share another journey that he experienced this year, a couple months ago, I think. And it was the triathlon in I think it was Escape from Alcatraz is how they called it, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm gonna leave it open to you, and just I like to understand what it was like to be prepared for that. What led you to doing this, and on the outside, on the back end of it, what did you experience from it, and how did you feel?
Oh, absolutely. And once again, thank you. It was an absolute honor to be on the last podcast with you, and I really got to open up a lot about myself, which is really really a unique opportunity that not a lot of people get. So to be able to do this again and something else that I'm very passionate about is very very exciting as well. And I'll try not to be as wordy as I typically can be, but no promises. No promises.
All right.
So I'll kick it off. So I grew up in Central Illinois in a cornfield, right? And I was athletic growing up and played baseball and some football, wrestled for many years. Kind of name it, I did it. And I started cycling when I was 19 for a silly mistake that I made as a young adult where I lost my license. And I started cycling. When I got my license back, I just kept cycling. I found that I really enjoyed it. I was really good at it. Not really competitively raced, but did a lot of time on my bike. I found out that I could think a lot as I pushed myself physically at that time frame, even as a young adult. But as a kid, growing up in a cornfield and nothing to do much in the summertime, we would watch Wide World of Sports on ABC. And one summer, I think I was about 14, and I saw summer, late fall, I don't remember when it was. I saw the Ironman World Championships on TV. And I was like, wow, someday I want to do that, and I set that goal. And years later, I was living in Florida, and one of my friends noticed that I rode my bike a lot. He goes, hey, have you ever think about doing triathlon? I'd never been experienced or exposed to it before. And I'm like, man, I got really excited, I'm like, I really wanted to do this. Oh yeah, let's do this. He goes, well, I'm doing a race in a couple of weeks. It's just a sprint, no big deal. I'm like, I'm there. So I did that first race, and he was a runner. I grew up swimming. During the summer. My babysitter for all my siblings was the community pool. So we got dropped off at open and picked up at close. So that's just one of those things. So I knew I could swim. I knew I could cycle. Running, I was a sprinter growing up, so I had to really focus a little bit in those 2.5 weeks on learning how to run a 5K. I'd never done that before. So a lot of things going on. So we started off that race, and my buddy Tony, we're in the same group. So we went to swim, and man, in 500 meters, you would think is nothing. And in reality, it's nothing anymore. But it was brutal. I got done with swimming on the bike, and that's where I excelled, And I remember it was only a 15-mile ride in Florida, very flat. And I passed my buddy Tony at like mile 10, and I went by him. I was doing about 32 miles an hour. And I just gently said as I went by, I'm like, nice swim, just was gone. And I got to the transition area, and I started to try to run. And I don't know if you've ever tried to do that kind of a brick where you're running after you just push your legs like that, but they just don't typically function the same. So the on the run, it's a 5K. About halfway done with the run, he runs by me and gently says, nice bike ride. And I'm like, and I'm suffering, But I got to the finish line, and everybody's like, oh, you did it. Everybody I know is there, like, you did it. And I'm like, don't talk to me. I'm going to get sick. I'm like, oh, this is horrible, So I got my body settled down, my mind settled down, my breathing settled down. I'm like, so how'd it go? There it goes. When's the next one? And from that moment on, I was hooked on triathlon. And living in Florida is actually easy to do. We could race once a month couple times a month if you wanted to. But with that, I started setting my eyes on building my bucket list, and that would be the ultimate goal of doing an Ironman. I didn't know at the time that you had to qualify for the World Championships or win the lottery. There's a lot of things that go into play there, but I could do one in Florida. So I set a goal, and I just before I started that race in Florida, I actually moved to Germany, so I had to fly back to the States to do Ironman Florida. So did that race, and I realized that distance was really something that excited me, because I could get into my mind. I could get things churning and working through, over an 11-hour workout. A lot of things can be worked out in that time frame, not just your body and your mind and your spirit as well. I ended up, and I have completed 5 Ironman races. And I was started in Florida, then I did Germany, then I did France, then I moved back to the States. I did Ironman Louisville and Coeur d'Alene. So I have a lot of long distance experience. But in that time frame of doing all of that and having kids towards the end of it, I still had one bucket list race in my bucket, and that's Escape from Alcatraz. Now, there's been movies, there's stories, there's whatever you want to call them about what happened at Alcatraz and people escaping there and whether they lived or not. So that's the lore and the legend and the fear factor of doing this race. And if you don't have a story, then you're not doing what you need to do. So for me, I did my last Ironman at 42. That was my last big race. Might even been 41. I had kids. Being a dad was more important to me, and my career is more important to me than doing triathlon at that point. Something had to go. I chose my kids, right? Fantastic. I wouldn't change it for the world. However, now that I'm not 41 anymore, and I just turned 55 with only one race left in my bucket, a couple of years I had the opportunity to do this race. They have a lottery. I signed up. I actually won a spot. When it came time to make the decision on whether to do this race or not, I was in a bad personal spot. Was separated, getting divorced again, and having some real amazing times looking inward at myself, but not physically pushing myself. I wasn't there again. I had to make a decision, and one evening sitting at a campground in front of a fire, I had to make a decision by midnight that night whether or not I was going to do this race. And I had my phone out. I had the form all filled out. All I had to do was push send, and I was in. This was it. This is my bucket. And I got a call from my sister. Said my mom's not doing well. And I sat there and I looked at the fire and I started talking to God a little bit. I'm like, I need some guidance here. I said I didn't have the tools I needed to make this decision on my own. So I just listened to God for a little while. My mom was one of my biggest fans. She's been to quite a few of my races, and she was there when pretty much all my kids were born, and she was very important to me. And I said, it's more important to spend this time and energy on my mom. A couple months later, my mom passed away, June 1st. And a really good experience for me, something that I cherish was my relationship with my mom. And I was actually able to brag about my mom. And this might lead to another podcast, it may not, but we used to drag race together. So we were on the same drag racing team. My mom had her own drag car, right? She was tougher than I was. But we have a lot of history there. Well, when my mom passed away, obviously, I had to evaluate what I'm doing. And things settled down after the divorce, got into a routine back with my family and my kids and all this other stuff. And just out of the blue, an email came across that said, hey, if you ever thought about doing Escape from Alcatraz again, the lottery is coming up again. And I'm like, you know what? Like, fine, I'll just enter the lottery. I probably won't win it again. What's the odds of winning the lottery spot again?
Right.
So I entered, and on the day that the selection came about, I got the email that said I got another spot. So I looked at that opportunity and I said, wow, mom's looking out for me. She must have felt bad that I didn't get to go the first time. So here we are. But I didn't know. So I reached out to my family, and I'm thinking about doing this race. And I say, the date of the race is June 11th. And everybody in my family was like, holy crap, that's kind of crazy. That's my parents' anniversary. So race day was my parents' anniversary. Now, my parents had still been married when my mom passed away. So, and of all the failures that I've had in my life with relationships, my parents did it right. When the words "to death do you part," came to fruition, that's when my parents split. So, but I looked at it and I put it out to the family like, well, obviously, mom's telling you need to do this race. And I said, it kind of seems like it, doesn't it? I said, but there's a cutoff day. I don't know when that is, that I have to make a decision. I'm gonna think about it a little bit. I had some logistics things I needed to do. My bike was out of date. My race bike I got in 1995 or 6, so it's pretty old. It has done 3 Ironmans itself, right? But yeah, it was time for a new bike. So I was looking at, can I get this done?
Right.
And I said, well, let me check the date. And so I Googled the date. I looked up the date that I had to make, the final day I need to make the decision to do this race. Same as when I was sitting in the campground. I had till midnight. This was midnight on December 16th. That's my mom's birthday. And it was more than an omen. It was more than my mom. It was bigger than me at that point. And I committed to doing this race. Now, I committed to doing this race after not racing for a very long time. That was a very trying, is probably the best word, thought process, because I'm no longer in my 40s. I haven't done anything major other than a couple bike rides longer than 50 miles in the last 10 years. I hadn't swam in 10 years at least. And I really hadn't run either. So there was a lot more to it, and I had 6 months to get ready. Unfortunately, experiences told me what I need to know, and that is what kind of physical shape I need to be in. I know from my history and things that I have done in my past in really tough situations that if I toe the start line, I'm going to cross the finish line, and whatever it takes to make that happen. So I joined the pool, started swimming, and of course, at 55 years old, I go to the University of Virginia Aquatic Center to swim with college kids.
Oh, good, huh?
You talk about a reality check.
Yeah,
so,
right.
So years past, I would swim, pretty spot on for pro times. I was a pretty good swimmer. I didn't have that, and I had to really focus on it, which starts attacking you mentally as well. Man, am I doing the right thing? As you're swimming with these people that are really good shape, young, and I'm struggling just to do 500 meters. And I have a really solid support group of guys in my dad group that I reach out to and I talk to, and I just kind of mostly it's just word vomit like I'm doing now, and it's. You get the kudos of, oh, I can't believe you're even attempting it. You're so great for this. All those things are great to hear. But when the voices start, when you're trying to breathe, and, as humans, we don't breathe water, you start questioning a lot of things. I know that when I get to a point where I am ready, I don't think about the activity. I just do. And my mind does other things for me. It took a little while. I'd say it probably took 3 months to get to the point where I could do that with swimming. And that's only 1/3 of what it is that has to be done, So I'm a cyclist, so I knew where my body needed to be for that. I set my spin bike up, and I would do Zoom calls and dad calls and coaching calls while on my spin bike. because it's the only
Yeah.
time I could really work out. I'm 55. I have a life. I have a career. I have kids. I have clients. I have all these things going on. When is it time to train? So you got to figure those things out. Living in the mountains here, I think it set me up pretty well for San Francisco, which everybody knows is pretty darn hilly. I got a new bike. I was able to, my mom helped me with that, which was pretty awesome. So I, still think about her when I ride. I got to a point while I was riding that, even though there was a struggle, I focused more so on just riding the hills, not really racing them. So I could save some for my legs, because now I have, 54-year-old legs they're all beat up, and I'm old. I get it. Okay, I'm good. So with all the training, the mental aspect that took its toll on me realistically was that I am going to have to travel. I'm going to have to, my youngest daughter, who's 11, where I share time with her mom, she was going to come with me. I had just ended a relationship that was good, but needed to change. And actually that person met us there as well. So that she went through a lot of the training aspect of it. So she was actually able to go to San Francisco, which was on her bucket list to do, to watch. So with all the training, the mental aspect of it, getting things dialed in, getting a little bit more clarity in doing that, pushing myself physically, mentally, and embracing the spiritual aspect and growth there as well, of pushing myself at this age, seemingly harder just to get caught up than I did when I was in my 40s. All of that was a true challenge, yet testament to my fortitude of what my goals mean. And I use that term goals. This was a goal that I wrote when I put in that bucket when I was in my early 30s, and this is a true testament to, you never know when you have the opportunity to reach a goal, and being prepared to accept the challenge as it arises and presents itself. Some say is really cool. I think it's probably more than that. I could have easily never thought about that race again, and sat on the couch and did whatever else and challenged myself differently. But for me to look at that bucket race, have that opportunity to do again, with my mom watching, her health the first time through, she wouldn't have been able to come once. My mom was there. My mom helped me get through that race. There were challenges in that race, which I'll get to in a second, because there were some real challenges. It's not the easiest race. It's I had to dig deep. I had to dig really deep, and not just physically. I think physically I was probably ready enough. I probably could have done better. Mentally, questioning myself every stroke on the swim. Am I going the right way? There's some things that were involved there that were like, holy Toledo, this is insane. When I got on the bike, I had some mechanical issues that there was an opportunity to just be like, I can't do this, but I did not say that. Yeah. And the interesting thing about this was the first race I've ever done that the timing chip was actually, you could track on the course. So that silly me, oh, hey, yeah, you guys can track me in the race, to everybody that I know. And of course, now
is that how it worked out? Yeah.
People track me on the race. I'm like, okay, wait a minute. There's a whole
Is he floating on the water?
A whole other dynamic. So actually, the water is the only place that they really couldn't track. So that was okay, because I'll get to that in a second. Yeah. But just to go flash forward a little bit, when I got done with the race, and I'm like, all this, and I go over to Jody and my daughter, Skylar, and I'm like, yeah, I had a mechanical issue on the bike, and Skylar's like, yeah, we saw right where you stopped. And I'm like, oh, great, here we go. So that was that. So race day comes, we travel there, and I get there, and I have a bike box that I carry my bike with, and because it has to be flown there, and it's with me, and I get there, and 2 days prior, I get there, put the bike together, I go out on a ride, man, I feel good, I feel strong, like, and I'm riding the same hills we're going to race on. So I'm like, man, this is all right. This is pretty good.
Yeah.
So, bike's ready to go. Shoes, everything's good. Swim stuff is there. I had to change from a 3 mil suit to a 5 mil suit because everybody's like, oh, the water's going to be freezing and you're not going to feel anything. And all this hoopla over, what suits. I bought a thicker wetsuit, which I thought, well, if anything, it's going to help me float a little better, but maybe I'll swim a little bit faster. I was trained to do that swim in 45 minutes to an hour. The morning of the race, went back, checked my bike, everything, transition is good. We had to get on a bus. The bus took us to the boat that then takes us out and drops anchor right off of Alcatraz Island. So I'm there for that. I'm a little worried about, because everybody's like, don't miss the bus, because if you miss the bus, you can't get the boat. If you don't get on the boat, you don't get to start the race. You don't get to start the race, you don't get to do the race. I'm like, so it was like a recording. It was crazy. It's kind of like, I remember that movie Airplane. The red zone is for parking or unloading. So that was in a loop in my head. I want to get there. So in that process, I didn't eat breakfast, of course, because it's 3 o'clock in the morning. Who eats breakfast at 3 o'clock in the morning, other than every other triathlete except for Dennis? When I get to the boat, we get on the boat. We're sitting there, and now the boat was leaving 45 minutes to an hour after I got on it. So we're sitting there talking, and just people are going through their racing resumes, and just, you're meeting people from all over the world. And that's a really cool bonding experience, but you're probably never going to see these people again in your life. Once the race starts, unless you finish next to the same person you're sitting to on the boat, you'll probably never see them again. So you meet people, you talk about things, how their lives are, what they do. And, I am pretty attuned with being a dad, a coach, all of those things. And I talk about that a little bit. Like, well, have you ever done a race before? And I start talking about my race history. So I've raced in 14 different countries, now 15 different states. I have a pretty extensive resume as far as racing goes. 14 years ago.
Yeah, right. Well, time
so
ago.
none of that matters. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, that's great. That was 1900s. Oh, that's right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, thank you for that.
Oh, boy.
So now it's getting close, and people getting fired up because the race is going to start. Now you have to jump off of this boat, and people jump every 2 seconds. And you can Google and watch the swim start of these things, and it's really intense. So you jump off this boat, and right below you are people, right? So you got to make sure you don't jump on top of them, because that would not be very good. However, race experience tells me that in the water, when you're trying to swim and share water space with 2,000 people, it's crowded. The thing about San Francisco Bay is it's tidal. So when the tide's coming in, the water's pushing into the bay. When the tide's going out, water pulls out back into the ocean. And it's like clockwork, right? So the swim, they give you all this amazing information. They did an amazing job with the race, preparing everybody if you paid attention. I grew up poor, and I still am too poor to pay attention. So I knew what I needed to do. I had my sights figured out, all this other stuff.
Right.
Once you're in the water, now this particular day, the race was amazing. I will not knock the race whatsoever. They cannot control water and wind conditions as much as we'd like them to. It can't happen. Yeah. So I drop in the water, and I get in the water, and I can't see my hand on a full stroke. I can't see my hand. Water's green, murky. And it's that color green that it's hard to explain, but it looks a little bit like vomit. Yeah. So it's not the most pleasant thing to be like trying to swim through. But as the current was going out, you're supposed to point kind of up. I don't know, I'll call it stream. It's not really a stream, but up current. And then as the current comes down, it kind of pulls you to the swim takeout. I'm in the water, and I can't see anything because there's a strong wind coming cross current, which means, let's say the tide's pulling left to right, the wind's blowing right to left. So the current's pulling you literally to the San Francisco Bridge, out to the ocean. you got a little ways. So it's not like right away. But as the wind's coming the other way, the top of the water has about a 3-foot random swell. So there's if you do any kind of swimming, there's a rhythm, and then I breathe every third stroke. I start my stroke. I can't get it. Every time I try to breathe, there's water. I'm like, what in the heck is going on? So I'm like, okay, Dennis, you've been here before. You know what swimming in open water is like. Just relax. Let everybody go. Let the chop settle down. Well, because this is such a televised and visual race, there's boats all over the place. So now you have boat wakes, wind, current. You can't sight now because everything you're looking for is on land, where you should be sighting about halfway up the hills. So it took a little while to figure that out. And before the race, they explain, if you get in trouble, raise your hand, get to one of the kayaks. If you get too far off course, we'll pick you up on a boat, drive you to 200 yards offshore, and just let you go finish. You won't be disqualified. It's a safety thing. You won't be disqualified. We want you to get out of the water safely to finish your day. And I'm in my mind, I'm thinking, yeah, that's kind of interesting, but okay, whatever. Nobody should really need that, right? So I'm swimming, and I'm swimming, just keep swimming. You got Dory playing in mind. I'm talking to mom, I'm talking to God. I'm like, where is the land? You get punched a few times in the face because you're swimming next to all these people. Okay, people swimming over you swimming over people. That's racing. That's the triathlon. And I look up, I'm like, I have not gone anywhere in like 20 minutes. Really? I look up, I'm like spotting the same stuff, but I was swimming enough against the tide pulling out, which turned out to be one of the strongest tides in the history of the race, which is weird. So I'm like literally swimming in place for 20 minutes. I'm going, what is going on here? So I'm like, okay, you just need to get to land. At this point, who cares where that is? You need to get to land. And in my mind, I'm like, you were ready for an hour swim on what should be a 45-minute swim. So I just swim, and I'm swimming. Now I see people on boats going all behind me, right? Going by me, getting dropped off. And I'm like, well, no. I'm like, what is going on here? And I'm just trying not to drown. I'm trying to just get to the swim finish, and I actually missed the swim finish exit by a quarter mile down the beach. That's how strong. Wow. I was in the water for an hour and a half. Yeah, so it was a tough swim, and I was ready for a tough swim. Everybody's all worried about the sharks. Because I'm doing a concert. Oh, you got so much sharks. I'm like, where'd you scare about sharks? Okay, I've dove with sharks. I've been scuba diving with sharks. I love sharks. Growing up in a cornfield, obviously I studied them as a kid. I know a lot about sharks. What I did not know, and something that I learned, and this is something they actually put on the race website, is there are 23 different species of sharks in San Francisco Bay. Oh, wow. And right after they say that, they say, not those kind of sharks, because everybody's thinking the ones that are coming to eat you, just waiting for the humans to jump in the water. So, and also I learned something else. The deepest part of San Francisco Bay is under the bridge at 390 feet. I'm going to ask you a question. What do you think the average depth of San Francisco Bay is?
What the average is. So that, if that's the deepest, I don't know, 150?
14 feet.
That's it?
The average depth. Which is why the water is so murky, right? Because all the tour boats, the water just never stops churning.
Wow. All right.
Yeah, so I learned a lot about San Francisco. Yeah. So I get out of the water, and I'm just spent. I know it was long. I don't wear a watch. I don't time myself during these races. I did when I was younger, but it got too much mental game. So I just didn't do it. I was doing this because this was something I wanted to do. And I'm running up the beach to the swim exit, and there's my daughter, and she came up, and she's like, she said something to me. Oh, I don't remember what it was, but it was motivating. It was very intense. But my whole thing was, I did not want her to see me quit.
Yeah. And
at 11 years old, for her to watch that event and watch all these people get plucked out of the water, but to see her dad swim the whole thing, I could still be swimming and I'd still be all right with that.
Right.
So we had a quick transition. I got out of my wetsuit. I put my shoes on. I ran the transition. I got on my bike. And most races I excel on the bike. This is a hilly course. When I got into transition, that's when you know where you stand within the grand scheme of things. And there's only like 40 other bikes in transition of the 2,000 people doing this race. Okay. I'm behind a lot of people. And usually I'll blow by a good amount. The ride was only 18 miles. I'm like, man, I can crush this, right? Okay. Very hilly. And I take off, and on the flat part before you get to where the hills start, I'm flying. Full tuck arrow, just wide open, just going. I'm like, okay, mentally getting ready for the climbs. I got this, you know. First climb, I was like, wow, that wasn't so bad. This is all it is. Man, awesome. Now, typically when you ride a hilly course, you have downhills, you have uphills, right? A lot of the times the downhills, you get halfway up the uphill before you really need to start working again, right? It's called momentum. Some race courses call themselves, and I'll put this in air quotes, technical rides, curves, and turns. I'm okay with that. I can turn fast. I can turn whatever we got. With this, you climb up these steep hills, then you go down this downhill, but then there's a 90-degree turn where you have to kind of stop to make the turn to go uphill. Takes all your momentum away. About the third semi-good climb, it wasn't a huge one, it wasn't a bad one. I started getting in my climbing gear. I still was in my comfort gear in the first two hills, and I was like, wow, this is awesome. I'm gonna do okay. I'm gonna make up some time. I'm gonna make up some space. I'm gonna make some, I'm gonna pass some people. And I made that downhill. I made that first right-hand turn, and it was a pretty significant uphill. I'm like, okay, so I get go to get my climbing gear. Then I'm working. I'm still in my I was in my big ring in front. I dropped down my small ring in front, but I was still in my comfort gear in the back. It got to the point where our legs are saying, okay, we need to make an adjustment. So I went to shift into my climbing gear, and my chain spit off halfway up this hill. Jeez. Now, I don't know if you've ever tried to pedal without your chain on the bike. You don't go fast at all. So I'm like, oh, and I'm trying to, and if you have any kind of momentum, you kind of use your gears to try to get your chain back on. Not happening. Okay. So I had to stop going up this hill. And when I stopped, that's when my daughter noticed that I stopped, because it like your little emoji goes.
Oh yeah, tracking you.
Absolutely zero. And so I get off, and I'm like, I'm gonna have to walk up this hill, because I couldn't restart going up this hill. It was that steep. So I'm like, okay. So I put the chain on. I get to the top. I jump back on. I'm going. I'm like, okay, cool. If I drop down 2 gears, I'm gonna have to work harder, but I know I can get going. And then the real hills in San Francisco presented themselves on this course. So I struggled on the bike. I really struggled on the bike. Every time I tried to shift my granny gear or my climbing gear, chain would come off. Yeah. So I couldn't climb. So I muscled through. I muddled through, and there were other people on the side of the road, similar issues. There's a lot of it. I walked a couple of hills because there's no way I couldn't even turn the pedals over. I was that steep. So that was really kind of a cool and humbling, reminder of, gravity is there. Right. But I got done with the hills, and I got back down on the flat, and my legs were like, man, I'm ready to go. So back, 25 miles an hour on the flat. I mean, riding like the big boys. Okay. Well, then comes the run. Before I start talking about this run, I have to say this. It was one of the coolest runs in a race I have ever done. And that's probably 350 to 400 races. It was a really cool run. I wish I had fresh legs for it. Yeah. So I transitioned off my bike. It's literally just a shoe change for me. All my race kit I wear at the same time. Some people put on these shirts, socks, all this stuff. Mine's just shoe change, boom, and out. I started on the run. I felt actually pretty loose. First mile and a half was flat. Same thing I just rode on, so it's flat. People are like, yeah, I'm almost last, but yeah, thank you. Right. But I run up on this guy who's, I have an Ironman tattoo on my calf, and I run
Okay.
up on this guy that has an Ironman tattoo on his calf. And I'm like, well, let's just work on this together, right? We'll support each other. We'll run when we can, the kind of thing. The rah rah. We run across people. We see people. So I run up to him and I just start walking with him. We start talking. He's from Canada. Great guy. We did the whole thing together. So on this race, on the run aspect of this race, now mind you, I'm already probably an hour longer than I thought I would be. I thought I'd be done by now.
Yeah.
So the course goes from asphalt to pea gravel, which was okay, no problem, to concrete, to uphill concrete, then on a drainage path from the rain coming down the road on the side. The dirt gets washed away. Now, at this point, people are running the other direction back to the finish as I'm heading out, and we're trying to share this path that's about 18 inches wide. So it was interesting, to say the least, but it was doable. And then we came across this, because that obviously water runs downhill. So we ran downhill on this path, and then we come across this parking lot. Then there's I'd say it was about a 25-degree incline of concrete. It was only maybe 50 feet, but I don't know if you've ever run 50 feet almost vertically when your legs are cashed.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was interesting, but we got up it, right? We got up it together. We got up it. And then the weirdest thing, we run another little dirt path, and then there's a culvert that we had to run through. And the culvert was interesting because mostly just like a tunnel, but on one end you actually had to duck to go through it, which I've never had to duck in a race like this before. But okay, let's go, let's keep going. So then we run uphill again on a dirt path, and then back down to on a regular mountain trail, right? Nothing major, to the soft sand on the beach. I don't know if you've ever run on soft sand. There's not a lot of traction. It will really work your legs. So we run the soft sand to the hard sand. Down the hard sand about 3/4 of a mile. And then, just to make it interesting, the turnaround is back up the soft sand. So you do the turnaround. They're all cheering you on. No, all you have to do is go back. You got this, and like your legs are going, I'm going to kick you in the face if I can lift my foot.
Right.
So then you go back down the soft sand, back to the hard sand, back up the soft sand to what they call a sand ladder. This is 400 steps, a 400-step staircase ladder that is comprised of 6-inch round log timber and sand. Yes, your worst nightmare coming to fruition in anything. And I prepared. I trained on stairs. I knew it was there, but I'd never seen it before. And this guy that I was running with, he went up like it was nothing. My legs were like, thought you said sand escalator. It's not an escalator? No, it's not an escalator, legs. We got to get up this thing. So he took off. And another guy I was chasing, I was eyeballing because I want to get him at the end, that sprint at the end where you pass somebody, you're like the hero. Yeah, that didn't happen. But I'm watching these guys, and they get out on me like 3/4 of a mile to a mile. I can barely see them when I get to the top of these stairs. And now we're going back that exact same course that we just ran out here for. It's the same one going back. And I just started reeling them in. And I was at a point where I was like, you know what? I'm going to finish this race with that guy I started this run with. And he's a mile ahead of me. And I have 4 miles to catch him. Mm-hmm. And I just started running. And I got comfortable in it. I was spotting people ahead of me that I wanted to catch. I would get a little closer, get a turn. Oh, move a little closer. And sure enough, about half to 3/4 of a mile out, I caught him. And when I ran back up on him again, I'm like, you're a hard man to catch. And he said, I was wondering when you were going to come back, So we chat a little bit. And then when we get to this point, now we're back on the asphalt, and it's about a quarter of a mile run. And he says, just so you know, I can't not run at the finish of this. I said, oh, that's cool. I'm glad you said that, because I'm going to go, too. And I'd like to finish with you. And he goes, okay, let's start it. He picked out a sign. I said, you sure you don't go to the following sign? It's a little closer to the finish. I don't want to be halfway to the finish and be like done, down the finishing chute, like, nope. So let's do it. So stride for stride, we finished that last little bit. And as we enter the finisher chute, it's on grass, and it's just little slight uphill. The grass is wet, and it's just this little slight uphill. And I'm like, oh, I can't stop now. I can't stop now. And when we crossed the finisher mat, we passed the other guy that I wanted to pass. And we stepped on the finisher mat at the exact same time, and we had the exact same finish. Mm-hmm. And so that was a really cool closing experience for me. In many races in the past, I've done similar things where I've helped people get to the end, and this time we helped each other. It was really kind of neat. That's cool. And then afterwards, unbeknownst to me, as I'm running down the finisher chute, my daughter, who's 11, is running on the outside of the chute videoing.
Nice.
She said she was running, and then I found out she was actually walking. And keeping up with me. So
it was in a car.
No, I was just that slow. But I finished. I finished in a run, which I always try to do. So I towed the line. I struggled. I worked. Mm-hmm. I talked to my mom. I had a couple times where I melted down, on the run, where I was like, man, I don't know. And the opportunity for me to understand everything that I had gone through to get to every single step of that race, kind of was piling on, and I know my mom was there watching. And when I crossed that finish line, I got my medal, my finisher medal, and just congratulate all the people around me, like, oh, you did it, because you got to be a sportsman as well. And then before I went and picked up my bike, I just sat down in the corner of transition, and I talked to my mom for a little bit, and I thanked her. The inspiration that started from my mom when I was a kid, every time I do something big like this, shows that's what I had for a mom. So I had a little bit of a meltdown there, and then I got my bike. Now, mind you, I'm mad at my bike now because it I failed it as much as it failed me. So I'm walking out, and all the pictures and the congratulations and all this stuff, and the race was done. Right, the race is done. For me, that experience wasn't done. 2 weeks ago, when my other kids were here for summer break, we drove to Illinois, and I took my race bike. And I don't think I told you this before, so I took my race bike with me to Illinois, and from where my mom is buried to my parents' house is, I don't know, it's like 25 miles, but it's Illinois, really flat. I forgot how flat until I rode it. I took the opportunity to ride from my parents' house to my mom's grave, and I gave her my finisher medal for Alcatraz, and I placed it on her headstone. Had a nice little talk with her, sat down, took a little cat nap, and just enjoyed the air, enjoyed the space, enjoyed the time with my mom. Then my dad and my kids showed up, and I was actually going to ride back, but we decided to do lunch. So I threw my bike in the truck and then went to lunch. But I had the opportunity to give my mom that medal, and it was pretty special for me.
Yeah, and I could tell the whole time you're sharing this story that you really loved your mom, and she really meant a lot to you. And what an inspiration that was for you to carry this out and then place that medal on her stone. That is really cool. I would have to say that, your mother was your inspiration, and for others, it could be their friends, it could be their kids, so whatever that is, not just for a triathlon, for people out there, just to have that person to try to accomplish something that they've been wanting to go and accomplish. That it's a great story, a great journey, you know, a good part of your chapter of your life that you got to share with us. And I appreciate that, and how open you were about not just, you know, not just the event itself, but outside of that, what started it, you know, what, you know, how you got it back to go, the chance and the opportunity to go do it again, you know. And you know, you said a lottery, so it sounds like they just picked somebody out of thin air, right? You know, that's how I assume it. And that's, you know, you get an email and you're like, oh, okay, you know, you get to go. Like, what are the chances of that? Like, so you had the opportunity, you took it, and you came out finishing it. You know, whether it was dead last or first place, you know, you came out finishing it. So yeah, so my hat's off to you for, you know, going ahead and doing all that. You know, it's something I probably wouldn't want to do right now, but you know,
Well, I'll tell you, I don't give advice very often.
yeah.
I talk to people about where they are in their lives, and I will always say this, and I tell this to my clients, I tell it to just about anybody that wants to listen, is if you can pinpoint your why you're going to do anything that you're doing. If you know your why, it embodies you. And you embody it. So it's not something that you necessarily have to look for, but you have to be prepared to see it when it's presented. And in anything, and you know, you took a leap of faith yourself. We talked about this in the past, you know. And my biggest thing now is, if you want to do something in your life that's big and you're scared to do it, I think I said this to you yesterday, right? Do it scared, right? Just do it, because you never know. I would rather try something 10 times and fail than not try it and not know. And every single day, I look for something that I'm going to fail in. I look for it. I look for it every single day, because if I failed, I at least tried.
Yeah.
And in that failure, there's lessons. And when you have those lessons and you learn, maybe you learn a way not to fail next time.
Yep. And all the people that have success, however you want to word that and look at it, what it is, they've all failed to get to that title, right? So yeah, I mean, no matter what it is, just try it, do it. You know, I know tries, like, you know, you're not doing anything, so you got to do it, right? You know, and just work on it. So yeah, no, I totally agree with you, and I'll back you up with that one.
Yeah. But this is awesome, man. I'm glad you let me share my story. I could spend another hour just bragging about my mom. But you know, the fact that my kids get to see me push myself. And another quick little thing. My youngest saw that. She's now swimming in a league and competitively. And the swim meet before my race and the swim meets after, she has found another level. Because she saw what it takes to push yourself. And so passing that along has been really kind of cool to see. And now she's really excited, and her language is now changed due to that. And, you know, I don't know if she'll ever do a triathlon. I hint at it, and there's little races that she could do, you know, and no, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. But, you know, she's watching.
Yeah. And kids do that. So you got to be that role model. You got to step up. So I'll share a quick little one with you. My son, he's 13, and, you know, I've been working with a personal trainer for 6 months now, if a little bit more maybe. And so he's seen me change, right? And so, you know, he likes his video games, he likes to do what he wants. That's great. But now he's starting to, hey, you know, when you're working out, you know, and, you know, so he wants to do some. It's a slow progress, right? But he's starting to look into it and see what is on the other end. It's not, it's delayed gratification, not, you know, instant gratification. So he's starting to see that. And it was funny because he just said something to me the other day about, have you ever heard about cold showers? I'm like, yeah, you know, I like, that's, you know, I don't do them all the time, but, you know, but like, I know about them. And he's like, yeah, they're really good for you. And he's, you know, so we're going to challenge each other on that. But But yeah, so I'm just sharing that because they see everything that you do, and they also see everything you don't do, and then that's also what they're gonna do as well, and not do those things.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, no,
And
yeah,
I think the key to moving them further for themselves is to then catch them doing that correctly, and
hmm
emphasizing that, wow, that's really great that you're doing that, rather than, you need to go do this, you need to go do that, you need to stop doing that. Wow, that's awesome that you're doing that. When you catch them doing
right,
something correctly, that has way more power than the negative aspect of what they need or slash should do. And kids, I think, grow exponentially when you can do that.
yeah, yeah. They they mirror your image. You know what I mean? So they're gonna mimic what you're doing. Yep, no matter what it is. So, yeah, Dennis, I appreciate you coming on and sharing this story, chapter, journey, part of your, however you want to word it, right? So it's been really great to have you come back on and share this. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and thank you for having the platform to do so. I hope my message gets out to somebody that can learn and grow. So thank
Oh,
you
it
for that.
definitely will. Yeah, definitely will. Thank you.
Awesome, man. Thank you.